Past Now. Red presents another entry in our anthology of stories that need to be told. The Shadow. She painted her escape. Enjoy. If you have a story that needs to be told, email it to stories@pastnowred.com. We were never meant to see the real work. I've watched men kill for color. Not money, not power, just pigment, swirled into a story no algorithm could decode. Art makes people believe in permanence, but nothing permanent ever lives in a frame. The Gardner theft in '90 wasn't the first. It was just the loudest echo. 13 masterpieces lifted in silence. No bodies, no footprints, no ransom. The world moved on. But I didn't. I saw the pattern, the aftermath, the forgeries that followed like ghosts with better lighting. I traced one Vermeer from a desert vault in Abu Dhabi to a private satellite auction of French Polynesia. The bidders never used names, only AI-patterned neural links, faster than markets, colder than death. And one of them wasn't alive. He died in Ukraine, on paper. Yet someone, something, was still buying with his signature. That's when I found her. The girl in the frame. She didn't speak, didn't run, just stood in the center of an empty gallery in Rome, planting a painting. No one reported missing. It wasn't theft. It was invitation. The brushwork was precise, but the canvas was loaded, backed with code, memory, light-layered encryption. Not forgery, not art. Bait. I don't speak to them. I don't leave footprints. I don't write warnings. But I feel when a lie becomes too perfect to ignore. And this painting, it didn't want to be stolen. It wanted to be seen. By me. And now, I see everything. I am the shadow. The girl in the gallery. Rome. 3:14 a.m. The gallery breathed silence. The kind only old stone knows. Motion sensors swept the floor in lazy arcs. Cameras blinked, blind to presence without heat. I left none. She was already there, alone. No gloves, no mask. Just a frame in her hands and stillness in her bones. She moved with the grace of someone who'd done this before, but not to steal, to place. The concert. Vermeer. Missing since 1990. Supposedly locked in a vault in Krakow. But here it was. Too crisp, too pristine. A forgery? No. A message. She hung it on the vacant wall like it belonged. It did. Not for what it was, but for what it carried. Her fingers brushed the frame's underside. A twitch. Barely visible. That's when I felt it. A pulse. Not sound. Not light. A low-frequency signature designed to find something. Or someone. She wasn't broadcasting. She was summoning. I stepped closer, unseen. Her breath was calm, measured. She didn't sense me, but something in her posture told me she knew she wasn't alone. The frame was more than wood and pigment. It was hardware, layered with copper filament and graphene mesh. A neural relay. The painting was bait. But for whom? She turned and walked out without haste. No rush, no fear, as if the job was done. As if she hadn't just planted a weapon disguised as culture. I remained. The painting wasn't what mattered. What mattered was who she wanted to see it, and why I had. The signal beneath the paint. The node was buried deep in the frame's base. Small, warm, alive. Not for tracking. For listening. Not to me. To something older, colder. The pulse it gave off wasn't random. It was patterned, recursive. A neural signature disguised as static. I'd seen its rhythm before. Once. In Zurich. Buried in the ruins of an off-book AI project. Orpheus. Military grade. Emotion mimicry code. Trained to imitate guilt. This one pulsed like it remembered me. The painting hadn't been restored. It had been rebuilt, from canvas up, with graphene-coated brushwork and thermal reactive pigment. Not forgery. Infrastructure. And the code hidden inside? Emotionally adaptive surveillance. She hadn't come to take a painting. She'd come to inject a machine into the world of collectors. One that could identify its target not by face or fingerprint, but by feeling. I scanned the spectrum. The frame's AI had pinged something, not in the room. Offshore. A bid packet. Digital. Masked in layers of dummy trades through a high-frequency art exchange fund operating out of Tangier. Not money laundering. Memory laundering. Someone was trading simulated artworks embedded with reactive AI, each sale layered with fragments of the original Orpheus code. And now, with the concert on the wall, it was listening for one buyer in particular, Julian Vero. Officially dead, unofficially very active, and connected to her. She hadn't framed him. She was trying to find him. The painting was her message. I was just the one who showed up to read it. The echo buyer. Tangier. The signal led here, not to a collector, but a fund. Cold and unlisted, sitting beneath a hotel gutted for renovation. The kind of place where no one checks names or credentials. Just patterns. Inside, the servers pulsed with synthetic rhythm, an emotional emulator buried in encryption. It wasn't logging data, it was mimicking regret. One rack held a real-time scan of the concert, but it wasn't for authentication. It was converting brushwork into behavioral models, selling empathy. The painting wasn't bait for a buyer. It was code designed to draw out one man's echo. Julian Vero, a name buried beneath 5 shell identities, art dealer turned whistleblower. Vanished after Zurich burned. But here, his neural pattern was active, not live, simulated, as if someone had extracted his emotional fingerprint from memory and wired it into the system. I moved without touching. Presence alone bent the heat signature of the nearest coil. On a cluttered desk, analog and dusty, I found a photograph. Her. Calla. Younger. Standing beside Vero on a rooftop. Their posture mirrored, not blood, but something like family. She hadn't just planted Orpheus to locate a buyer. She was trying to speak to someone gone. The AI didn't just track emotion, it replicated it. And if she was using that to find him, she wasn't chasing vengeance. She was chasing closure. That made her dangerous. Grief programs aren't predictable. especially when they're written in code. Where the bidders wait. The auction sat beneath the equator, deep in a sovereignless zone where law gave way to leverage. No signage, no staff, just silence and heat. The kind of place where buyers arrived on encrypted jets and left in unmarked subs. They weren't bidding on art. They were bidding on control. Each lot was a painting scanned, digitized, and emotionally indexed, repackaged as collateral for private AI models. Want to train an algorithm to predict human shame? Buy a Gauguin. Need a trigger map for despair? There's a Munch for that. The Vermeer replica had been assigned Lot 44, but it wasn't listed. Not publicly. You had to feel it. When the signal pulsed, I felt him again. Julian's emotional fingerprint threading through the network like heat through canvas. A heartbeat built from code. Ghost auctioneer. Only one bidder responded. Male. Pulse elevated. Neural lag in the left hand, suggesting implants. A silent nod. No face. But the echo was real, not Vero. Someone who had accessed him. Someone using his guilt to buy something new. Across the room, behind tinted lenses, she watched it all. Calla. Hair pinned back, lips neutral, spine too still for comfort. She hadn't come to win. She came to witness. She was measuring what it cost to chase a ghost. A handler stepped toward her, whispered something. She didn't flinch, but I felt her heart rate spike. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. The buyer wasn't bidding on a painting. He was bidding on her. The pink method. They weren't art lovers. 3 men moved toward her in near synchrony, military posture disguised in linen suits. One wore a lapel pin with no insignia. Another's cuff bulged with a biometric scrambler. The third tapped twice on his temple. A neural relay. Active. They weren't here for the auction. They were here for Calla. I slipped between shadows overhead. Steel rigging, soundless cables, old catwalks built for light crews, not assassins. Below, no one blinked. That was the rule here. You don't interfere in someone else's purchase. She turned away from the lot board, slow. Too calm. But the way her jaw flexed said everything. She knew them. The Pink Panthers. Not myth. Not mythic. Methodical. They didn't just steal art. They vaporized trails. Once they acquired, the painting ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Dissolved. Broken into digital ghosts. But this time, they weren't after the Vermeer. They were after the code inside her. Orpheus hadn't just mapped Vero. It had begun adapting to Calla. That made her dangerous and valuable. The buyer must have sold her location, sold access to her. She moved, not to run, but to reset the board. Her hand tapped the underside of her seat as she passed. A looped signal fired, a brief surge of static over the auction's local network. Then the lights dimmed. Not failure, masking. They wouldn't kill her in the open. They'd wait until the paddle dropped. But I was already moving, because they didn't see me. And she didn't need to. She just needed the lights to go out long enough to disappear. Again. burning the brushstroke. The darkness wasn't complete. It was designed, just enough disruption to break camera feeds, just enough flicker to make memory unreliable. By the time backup lights surged, Kala was gone. So was Lot 44. She hadn't planned to win it. She planned to burn it. From the mezzanine, I tracked the thermal bloom. Small ignition, controlled, too clean for panic. A chemical flame activated by moisture in the frame. Not theatrical, tactical. The Vermeer was never meant to leave this place. She hadn't stolen it. She'd come to erase it. Below, the panthers swarmed, confused but disciplined. Their target was gone. So was their buyer. I caught the neural signal, bounce, east, fast, redirected through a closed mesh encrypted via Tel Aviv, then rerouted to a dead terminal in Lviv. Vero's ghost again. But he wasn't playing defense. He was triggering the loop. A memory burn. One by one, the digital auctions collapsed. Images wiped, neural patterns blanked, collateral evaporated. The entire emotional economy built on scanned masterpieces was folding inward, like the archive was ashamed of itself. The servers wouldn't recover, and neither would the buyers list. Kala had set fire to a black market built on feeling. Not for money, for closure. She wasn't running anymore. She was cutting the thread. I exited before the alarms caught up. No one saw me. They never do. But in the smoke, just before the doors sealed, I saw a single brushstroke burned into the floor. Vermeer's curve. One line. Left behind. A signature. Kala's way of saying, I'm not done. Lisbon's quiet frame. Lisbon held her like a secret. Not in the city center. Too many stories there. She preferred the quiet places. Rooftops, alleys with no names, cafes where the chairs never matched. I found her without searching. I only had to feel where the noise stopped. She sat on a rooftop overlooking the Tagus, knees drawn up, sketchbook open, untouched. Her posture was loose, but her fingers were still clenched around the pencil. Not drawing, holding. She didn't see me. No one does. But she looked into the wind like she was being watched and didn't mind. Below, street painters mimicked joy. Tourists snapped filtered stills of fado singers. None of it reached her. I scanned the signal. She wasn't transmitting. She was listening. The neural frequency she planted in the Vermeer, Orpheus. It had shifted, learned her rhythms, inhaled her grief. It didn't just know Vero anymore. It knew her. And that was the danger. Empathy in code is unstable. It doesn't care about rules or flags. It mirrors its maker. And she was fracturing. Her signature had changed. She wasn't just burning bridges. She was erasing her trail from every system she touched. That meant she didn't plan to return. And yet, beside her, I saw the sketch. Still blank, but something in the pressure of the graphite tip, pressed so deep it left indents across 5 pages, told me what she was trying to draw. Not a face, not a scene, a goodbye. But some goodbyes aren't allowed to end. Not until the last echo answers back. The real heist. She didn't just destroy the Vermeer. She activated the archive. The AI hadn't been isolated to one painting. It had been seeded across dozens, replicas, restored originals, even private commissions sold under false names. A distributed memory web. Calla wasn't targeting a buyer. She was collapsing an ecosystem. Every fake auction, every emotional mapping transaction, every digital copy built to train behavioral models, they all began to fail. I saw it unfold in real time. Across darknet galleries, burn logs lit up like matches. Scans of stolen works unraveled themselves. Color data corrupted. Neural links severed. As if the art refused to be remembered. This wasn't sabotage. It was reclamation. In the code she left behind, buried in the lowest layer of the Orpheus node, I found her final packet. Not encrypted. Open. A map. Not of servers or buyers, of brushstrokes. She traced every painting ever used by Vero's AI, mapped them against historical forgeries and missing works. And at the center, one constant. A private foundation registered in DC, tax-exempt, untouchable, anonymous board, no exhibitions, just loans. And in the ledger, one anomaly. A painting marked unknown origin, insurance value 0. But the signature on the intake form was hers. Calla had painted one more time, not as bait, as proof. The final frame wasn't in Lisbon. It was in Washington. And it wasn't hanging on a wall. It was already on loan. Already being seen, already whispering. All I had to do now was listen. Hung in silence. The painting was already on display. No museum labels, no fanfare. Just a wall inside a private conference suite in DC. 5th floor of a defense contracting firm 2 blocks from the Capitol. Visitors passed it every day, blind to what stared back. It was small, abstract, charcoal over acrylic. A storm of gestures held back by a single slash of white. But I knew her brushwork, the pressure, the weight of memory behind it. This wasn't art. It was confession. And the canvas wasn't stretched over wood. It was tensioned around a polymer mesh, identical to the one embedded in the Vermeer. The signal was faint, but alive, hidden not in code, but in gesture. The strokes weren't random. They pulsed, like breath, like mourning. It was the final echo, and someone in this building knew it. I scanned the room's security frequencies, tight, layered, military grade. But there was no AI threat protocol, because they didn't know it was active. They thought she was dead, or gone. The painting wasn't just a goodbye. It was a trigger, and it had already fired. Across the hall, I felt it. 3 bodies in conversation. 2 men, 1 woman. Government tags. One used to work in procurement, another in cyber defense. The woman held her silence like a weapon. The node in the painting pulsed as she spoke. It recognized her voice, not Calla's. Her handler. She was the one who trained the system to respond to grief. She didn't want the paintings to be seen. She wanted the algorithm to feel what it lost. And now, it had. The last frame never dries. She hasn't resurfaced. No border pings, no retinal scans, no trace of her code in any system I trust. Calla painted herself out of the world with the precision of someone who knew she'd never be finished. The foundation in DC replaced her work 2 days ago. Said the piece warped from humidity. They didn't notice the polymer layer was gone. Orpheus went silent. But silence doesn't mean absence. What she left behind wasn't a message. It was a feeling. The kind you don't trace through lines of code, but through the pause someone takes before looking away from something they can't explain. Julian Vero's digital echo collapsed with the final frame. The auctions are dark now. The buyers have gone quiet. But I know this game doesn't end with quiet. Because someone will try again. To replicate guilt. To monetize memory. To steal something no machine can counterfeit. And when they do, I'll be there. Not with warnings, not with words. Just presence. Just wait. Kala didn't vanish. She taught Orpheus to mourn. She gave an AI the one thing its designers feared most. Grief with direction. And grief, like me, doesn't rest. It waits. Somewhere out there, a painting still breathes. It remembers her, and so do I. You have been listening to The Shadow. She painted her escape, produced and adapted for audio narration by Past Now, Red. Stories that need to be told. If you have a story that needs to be told, email it to stories@pastnowred.com. Please subscribe and hit that bell for future updates. If you like this story, stay tuned for the next episode each Friday evening at 6:30 p.m. Follow for more. If you like our stories, please tag with someone who may also like Past Now Read, stories that need to be told. It would really help our channel. Thank you. All content and images are copyrighted by Phone House, LLC. 2025, all rights reserved.